Hey, how's it going, all? I just want to go through Matthew 8 and just kind of give my commentary on it, but with the sort of focus and purpose to um, challenge, and really question the validity of the narrative of a lot of the Hebrew Israelites who talk about, God is only here for the Israelites and salvation is only for the Israelites. These big very loaded statements that they make, if you've interacted with them on the streets or through YouTube and stuff. And so I'm going to use this verse. In my opinion, there's many. Just the final judgment video that I've done also goes directly against that line of teaching. But I'm going to go through Matthew 8 and focus on this interaction that Jesus has with the centurion, and then use it as a platform for discussion and my take on it. And so Matthew 8 reads, "When he was come down from the mountain, great multitudes followed him," speaking of Jesus. "And behold, there came a leper and worshipped him, saying, Lord, if thou will, thou can make me clean. And Jesus put forth his hand and touched him, saying, I will, be thou clean. And immediately his leprosy was cleansed. And Jesus saith unto him, See thou tell no man, but go thy way, show thyself to thy priest, and offer the gift that Moses commanded for a testimony unto them. And when Jesus was entered into Capernaum, there came unto him a centurion, beseeching him, and saying, Lord, my servant lieth at home, sick of the palsy, grievously tormented. And Jesus saith unto him, I will come and heal him. The centurion answered and said, Lord, I am not worthy that thou should have come under my roof, but speak the word only, and my servant shall be healed. For I am a man under authority, having soldiers under me, and I say unto this man, Go, and he goeth, and to another, Come, and he cometh, and to my servant, Do this, and he doeth it. When Jesus heard it, he marveled, and said to them that followed, Verily I say unto you, I have not found so great a faith, no, not in Israel. And so this is an extremely powerful statement that I'm certain does not get zeroed in on, but the implications to me are absolutely profound. First, in verse 10, it says, Jesus marveled. And so we have to understand that in and of itself is an incredible thing, and it shows that an entity that is perfect and has an incredible amount of knowledge and wisdom and understanding of things on earth and in the heavens, but he was able to marvel, and that I still can't wrap my head around that, and no one can, how God can be powerful but still be humble, and to be able to appreciate what he will describe here as great faith. And so that in and of itself is incredible. And then he, in my opinion, just keeps upping the ante and saying, I have not found so great a faith, no, not in Israel. So what is Jesus referring to? Is he referring to the geographic border that is Israel? That's absolutely not true. We know that. Many references in the Bible, whenever it's talking about Israel, it's talking about the person, Jacob, and the 12 tribes. So it's a group of people, and so a lineage. And so he's saying, I have not found so great a faith, no, not in Israel. So he's saying he hasn't seen this kind of faith amongst the people that should be the most faithful in the 12 tribes. So we know just by this statement, and further confirmed in the next one and the following one, that this centurion was not an Israelite. And so the Hebrews will teach that pretty much everybody that God likes is an Israelite, and it's like, and obviously God loves them the most, whoever's out on the streets doing the work. And so that is just a blasphemous stance. There's no other way to say it. It's not biblical. It doesn't make sense spiritually. And Matthew 8 goes against that, and Jesus himself speaks against it directly because he is applauding, the faith of this centurion. And so to put it in modern day terms, just from the amount of power that this person is stating that they have, that they have soldiers and servants and all that, so some kind of political leader coming asking for help for one of his servants. And so if we look at his initial request in verse 6, Lord, my servant lieth at home sick of the palsy, grievously tormented. So, one would think that there is still a hierarchy underneath him, the soldiers and all that. I'm assuming would be potentially like of higher rank than a servant. So this is a person kind of maybe on even on possibly the lower end of the hierarchy, underneath under the authority of this centurion. But he's petitioning for healing, and so imagine, like, again, in modern day terms, it would be, even just to use probably someone not even as powerful as this person, but like Jeff Bezos, someone who has a lot of money. This would be him going to, like, a person claiming that they can heal for one of his, like, warehouse workers, someone, one of his quote unquote servants. And we know that he would never do that, and that's just that's ridiculous. He would never care. And I've worked there, and I know the way it's like on the inside, that the whole organization is designed to exploit hourly workers and literally work them to the bone. And there's enough stuff in mainstream news and articles to know that their practices are deeply, deeply evil. So this person is not like that. And so one would think that if someone like Jeff Bezos would go up to Jesus, it's not necessarily that he wouldn't heal the person that he's petitioning for, but we know that he would never do that. A leader like that would never even go on somebody else's behalf and care. And then even if he did care, he wouldn't go out of his way to, like, do anything about it, because we know that he's the person who's actually architecting a tremendous amount of evil and creating these sicknesses for a lot of his servants. And so this leader is very, very different than that. And obviously that went into the total calculation of Jesus giving him this high praise and being marveling at this, that God has given this person so much authority, but they are aware of the health of the people, potentially even at the lowest rung of the hierarchy beneath him. And so that's an amazing thing. You would have to think that first, that somebody compassionate would only be compelled to do this, and then somebody that Jesus would give a compliment like that, and then take the person's request seriously. All those things are factored into it. And so this is an amazing thing. And so in my opinion, he's stating there that this person is not in Israel. And it also shows, again, in verse 10, that Jesus obviously is extremely compassionate, and the healing here shows that. But he's not pie in the sky kind of God. He's not like a teddy bear. He would be like, he would be rough, and he would be difficult to please, on a lot of different things, and clearly we see here faith is one thing that is something that can impress God and make him marvel. But for Jesus to turn around and in many ways kind of not undermine the faith of the people that follow him, but really, like, kind of jab at them a little bit and say, this person, this sort of random centurion, walks up and then does something that is not like necessarily like a major sacrifice, like, obviously for him to do that shows some level of compassion, but we also don't know necessarily even the circumstances around it. Like, this could be a one-off, this could be him just on a good day and all that. I suspect from what I said earlier, that's not the case, that a person like this is highly likely to be compassionate, but in many circumstances. But just thinking of myself, if I was a person who followed Jesus regularly and heard him say this, I'll be like, dude, who's this guy? Like, this Johnny come lately comes and it says makes one request and then leaves, and then he's all of a sudden like has great faith, and so the people around him are human. They would probably have thought that, but it just shows that Jesus would use these interactions to condition the people around him. He would necessarily not be doing it, I don't think, to like undermine the faith of those around him, but challenge them, and like to ask them to use this as a way to even increase their faith and to calibrate it. If people around him were getting too high and mighty just because they were following him around and look at this, like how great all the sacrifices I've made and this and that. Jesus would use any interaction he could with even other people to humble, those people even close to him. There is a pruning that is always happening. And one would think, just by definition, being around an entity that's perfect, you would have to be transformed to hang around somebody like that. And those who did not want that would not stay very long, because that's a fairly rough statement for the people around him to take, because a lot of them, and possibly even all of them, have sacrificed a great deal, because you're hanging around what is known to be essentially a rebel to the establishment in that time, and a person who would have incredibly high standards for how a person is required to live their life, and it's not just the outward appearances, it would be the inward too that he would know. And so that's something also to keep in mind. Again, I'm not throwing Jesus under the bus saying he's like an awful person, but we have to understand he's not the way he's portrayed in a majority of the teaching, and certainly not here in America. Verse 11 says, "And I say unto you that many shall come from the east and west, and shall sit down with Abraham and Isaac and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven." And so again, he's stating that there's going to be people sort of outside of the initial group that were supposed to be the most faithful in Israel, the group, the Israelites. And he's saying that, again, reiterated in 12, "But the children of the kingdom shall be cast out into utter darkness. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth." So there's going to be a group that are outside of the Israelite fold who will be in the kingdom of heaven. And so there's no way around it. I think people will say he's a centurion. They'll argue to the end, people who have that agenda, and we know that that's satanic, because anybody who pushes that, they themselves don't know that they're an Israelite in this generation. So they're essentially, they could be lobbying for their own removal or taking away their invite into the kingdom by arguing for that too staunchly. So anybody who's like, God is only, in it for me or for us, and then puts very rigid borders around that are not biblical, and requirements, that person is not somebody you want to follow. And it's just common sense. We do not know, even if that were the case, which it's not, that only the Israelites will be in the kingdom of heaven. We don't know who they are. So that whole teaching is absolutely demonic. So, just avoid that, because it doesn't make sense. And Matthew 8 reaffirms that that's just not true. And so, and finally here it says that, "And Jesus said to the centurion, Go thy way, and as thou hast believed, so it be done unto thee. And his servant was healed in the selfsame hour." And so, it's the same language that the centurion's using, that John the Baptist uses, like, I'm unworthy to untie, his sandal. And then here the centurion saying that, he's not worthy to have Jesus or Yahushua come under his roof. And so it's not so much the fact that it's really the understanding, and we would have to think that a person who says that and then, merits the response that Jesus gave him of marveling, that a person would really believe that. They're not just there saying it, and just sucking up and blowing kisses to God and all that. Because again, he's petitioning on behalf of somebody else too, which takes away the conflict of interest. But for someone to say that, you would have to think that he knew about him. It's not like he just heard one thing, like, oh, this person is healing, let me just do this real quick. Like, one would think that he had an understanding of Jesus and some element of his, some aspects of his ministry, and what he was all about, for him to make this kind of a statement, and also call him Lord. And so there's an aspect of worship there as well. And so to me, this is a very, very powerful thing, that the way I see it, the way that God wanted this, at least theoretically, and it certainly is not happening in this generation, is that the Israelites were meant to be the sort of closest to God, like from an earthly perspective. And so, Jesus is a Jew from the tribe of Judah, so he is an Israelite. But the Israelites as a tribe, as a group, as a nation, were supposed to be the people that God interacted with basically first, and the most closely, and revealed secrets to them, and prophesied through them and all these kind of things. And then the way that they, managed their house was meant to be like an example for all the world to follow and to be drawn to, and to ultimately bring people in that will also worship the God of the Israelites. And so if the Israelites are who they are, I think many of them are, not their leadership. they're not doing a very good job. And so it's probably been like that throughout human history. But I would also think that there have been times in human history where Israelites have ruled either the world or a certain region and done it well, and been like an example for people to be drawn to, the God of the Bible. But right now, their teaching is so wayward, and it's hard to know why God would allow this. Like why God would really in this generation, in many ways, have no sort of group in any kind of size. And I'm not even saying size. The bigger the group, the better. But there's really very little consistent, sound teaching out there. And so one would think whatever that group is, those are the Israelites, and not just now, but in any generation. And we don't have that. In fact, the so-called Negroes, who I do believe are the biblical Jews, many of them are the biblical Jews, have absolutely satanic leadership, And so, it's a very difficult thing to understand because, again, they were meant to be, the light of the world, and draw people into to the Bible and have sound teaching. But we've seen that people have replaced sound doctrine with just genealogies and all this kind of stuff. God loves us and God's only here to save us and all this kind of stuff. No one knows with 100% certainty that the Bible's true because, like I said, Revelation has not come to pass. So that's one issue that should humble everybody. But then no one knows that they will be saved with any kind of certainty because Jesus does say that there is an elect, and he says that those who endure to the end will be saved. And so salvation is not the way that mainstream Christianity understands salvation, like somebody is going to heaven. Salvation, the way I understand it now, is actually being saved from death, and during this so-called second coming, to be saved or to be, rescued or taken away, taken out of this physical existence and not taste death. So essentially to be saved from death during the second coming. And so, that's no one knows that they're, that's going to happen for them. And so it doesn't make sense to say anything with absolute certainty. And to me, that's by design because a person would boast, if they knew that, or in the opposite case, if you knew that you weren't on the list, there would be, it would be very bad. It could be a very destructive mindset if you already know that you're not, if you're just kind of a character in the movie that God's going to ultimately destroy. That's not very that's not good news either. And so it would hurt both ways for anybody to know with certainty what side they're on, left or the right-hand side. And so all this is meant to humble us and hopefully increase people's faith and all that. That's the theory, but it doesn't always work. But we can definitely see one way to make God marvel is first and foremost to be compassionate, which is not common, and then second to practice faith and to do that in a way that this centurion did is an amazing thing. And I think, again, faith and works and compassion are all interconnected, and I think that is a major point that is not emphasized enough in biblical teaching about how our modern day Christianity, especially in America, has been hijacked with faith, no works. The law is dead. You can't earn your way into heaven and all that. But the Bible, in many places, speaks completely against that. It's like if you're not doing works or you're not compassionate or whatever, you're just a faithless degenerate. It doesn't matter. I don't care who you are or what position you have in the church or anything like that. People can keep saying that and keep believing it, that it's all about faith. It's all about faith. You can't earn your way into heaven and then all that kind of stuff. But it's like, that's absolutely demonic. That, and it's just the stupidest teaching that I've ever heard in my life. Now more than ever, it's just, it never made sense from the beginning, and it makes zero sense now. And in fact, it's a completely demonic doctrine. And many of the Hebrew Israelites will also say that their quote unquote charity and compassion is sitting on the street corners preaching cursing out women who are wearing, scantily clad clothing, and that's their understanding of compassion, and so we're dealing with, again, a very, very depraved world where even the quote-unquote righteous, the people who think that they're closest to God, house some of the deepest darkness. Hope everyone's doing well. Bye.